Evening. We are live and we've got some work to do. First time doing YouTube live vertical. Hopefully this is working vertically for you. And let me know if you hate vertical live or love it, please. Got a couple things to get done tonight. I'm going to be in and out of camera frame here for a little bit. By the way, if you don't know, I am at Hardline 4x4, Pottstown, Pennsylvania. I work here full-time now. And I still do the YouTube thing when I can. So if you're joining, welcome. I am John. That's the spool bus. These are Skyjacker springs. And we're going to be installing these, replacing this Skyjacker spring, which is not in there currently. There is a spring in there currently. We won't talk too much about that. But basically, this spring worked pretty well when I had a Dana 30 in the front with all the, basically, it was Barnes hardware, but stock replica hardware on there. Now that I have a Dana M210 or JL Rubicon 44 in the front, with the factory spring purchase from that axle, it raised things up a little bit. Some other minor things changed with suspension, and when I put that axle in and got things going, I had to cut this spring down as a temporary solution to keep the front end from being so nose high. So you'll notice, here I just got another, that's not a great comparison, it's a JL spring. I will open this up and show you the let it open. There we go. Show you apples to apples comparison of the Skyjacker spring to the Skyjacker spring. This is a 3-inch spring, and what was in the Jeep before, if I didn't mention it already, this is a 5-inch spring, and it was technically labeled as a 6-inch TJ spring. I noticed now Skyjacker labels these springs differently on the spring itself, which makes total sense. So if you know all about XJs and TJs, then you know that the TJ spring is 1 inch less lift for an XJ. And they actually label these as such now. Show you right up close there. Is that backwards for you guys? Because it's backwards for me. That's dumb. I'm using the front camera. But it is TJ40 FS, a 4.0 lift front spring, and XJ, and DR is dual rate, not driver's side. XJ 3-inch. So yeah, dispelling any rumors about there being more or less lift than 1 inch difference between TJ and an XJ, you've got right there on the spring. So this 4-inch TJ spring is a 3-inch XJ spring, and I arrived at this spring size by some measurements. So let me tell you about that. So the 5-inch spring that I had, I set on the ground with the top down and measured to the tallest point of the coil here, and I've got very, very tallest there, about 23 3/4. A friend of mine, also a Skyjacker ambassador, Taylor Wise, he had a 4.5-inch Skyjacker coil sitting at home. So he measured it for me, and it was about the same size as this guy. I think slightly less, but I was like, yeah, don't want to go with a 4.5. It's going to be what I have. Now, the difference, which I started talking about earlier, and I realized I cut out on that. The difference you will see there is in the tails of these springs. Rotate this one around the same orientation. See how that last wrap gets closer to the coil than it does on this one because it's cut. So that's going to stack up a little differently when you compress it than this one will. So this is probably going to be, for its size, a little bit less lift than this one was, or maybe a little bit more. I'm not all that scientific and smart. But this one measures, drum roll, I already measured it, 22 and a half exactly. That's good info. 22 and a half versus 23 and 3/4. I was hoping to drop my front end 1 to 1.5 inches. So straight measurement, it should go down 2 inches, or sorry, 1 3/4 inches. I think it's going to be a little bit less because the tail of that spring was compressing. So if I'm thinking about that right, that tail of that spring is probably kind of flexing to be a little bit more like this, like being forced to be a little bit more like this spring. So it's losing a little bit of height by doing that, if I'm thinking about that correctly. Do I have a chat going on with this? I don't see it. If I do, welcome to the chat. Live chat. Are you guys chatting? I don't know. Bunch of you guys on here. That's awesome. So this is just a real impromptu live. But anyway, I wanted to measure where I'm sitting right now. So like I said, these were temporary springs that Bill had here at Hardline. Gave me to, I just pulled out my 5-inch cut down spring to measure it. And Bill was like, I have these 3-inch rock crawler springs, or 3-inch TJ springs, which we know would be a 2-inch XJ spring. And so I threw those in the front, and it's too low. So you can't see the whole Jeep. I'm not going to back up far enough that you can see the whole thing. It is nose low right now. And just to see, I'm not going to put the cut down 5-inch spring back in and set it down and all that. I wanted to measure before I lift it on the lift here to my fender and get a baseline here. So going right up the center of the axle there, I'm seeing 41 and a half. So you write that on a piece of tape here. And we'll have that as a reference point for later. 41 and a half. And like I said, unfortunately, I don't have a baseline from the 4.5-inch spring. I should have measured that. It was late. There were some beers happening and it did not get measured. Hindsight. So 41 and a half is before. Let's get going on this. So I'm ready to raise the suspension up. These coil springs for these shocks are too long. So the coil spring comes unseated, which you definitely do not want to see with a dual rate spring like this. They're a rock crawler dual rate spring in there right now. Going up. Make sure everything's safe. Oh, not great. A minor adjustment to my lift pads here. You can tell that front end's so low because the back pads came off a while ago. Ugh. That is. Don't mind my struggle here. All right. Check this back one real quick. I can't quite see it. All right, take two. Much better. Probably see the spring nowhere near the top of the coil there. Yeah, you can probably see that. I gotta remove the bump stops and the tire, but you could almost get that coil out if there was no bump stop, adjustable bump stops in there. Guys, I can't tell if there's a chat going on or not. So hopefully you all aren't trying to chat with me there and expecting responses, because I can't see it. First time doing vertical live. All right, we got to remove sway bar end link, bump stop, and shock. Three-quarter. I do apologize that the impact sounds are probably very loud. I'm wearing a microphone so you guys can hear my voice, but maybe it's too much amplification. I don't know. All right, I will also get to the bump stop from here. By the way, I really like these. These are Metal Cloak's Duro Bump on the top, and I was almost riding on bump stop while I had this spring in here. So I was definitely hitting it excessively compared to any normal driving that I would have had previously. And I had definitely felt it hit them before, but it is nice and smooth. It is like a progressive bump. Obviously nowhere near as nice as an air bump stop would be, or a hydraulic bump stop, but for the price of, I think, around $80, they are well worth it. So I don't plan on being anywhere near that close to bumps going forward. It was just a very stiff ride. Felt like I changed my shocks. And also, once I get these springs changed out and I'm happy with the height, I will go ahead and order the Skyjacker ADX 2.0 shocks that I've been wanting. Also, as you guys have probably seen, if you're a subscriber / Instagram follower and all that. Dirt Road Therapy is a Skyjacker ambassador, which means I can offer you guys 10% off anything from Skyjacker. Discount code DRT10, and that is in my description. And I'm forgetting to take the shock out here. I'm also going to pull the sway bar off the other side because it has to come off anyway. That's in the way. Also, in case you were wondering, anti-rock sway bar. Sorry about that. Anti-rock sway bar is well worth the investment. You know, they're a little spicy compared to other XJ parts, especially. Worth the money. All right, I gotta raise this thing up so I can put a pole jack under it. Before I do that, I might as well take off my tire on this side so I don't have to lower it back down or risk being killed by tire. All right, raising her up more. Now we can get all the droop. Shouldn't really need that much more droop. Leave that brake line a little bit, if possible. Brake lines make good limit straps because you always know if it fails. Your limit strap, that is. How else would you know if your limit strap failed? Oh, look at that, like a glove. Beautiful. And I think what's cool is this shock length, which is 30 inches fully extended, is going to be about the perfect shock length for this setup. It's a little short before, crazy as that may be. It is totally different with the JL axle than it is with the XJ. These lower shock mounts are outboarded much further than they would be on an XJ, which is fantastic because they don't hit the frame when flexing for full droop. Typically, you know, the track bar pulls the axle driver's side, and on an XJ you're going to have some potential for that shock to hit. So this won't do that. But I'm really excited to get some Skyjacker ADX 2.0 shocks on here. Hey, there's chat. Okay, quick recap here. I had Skyjacker 5-inch XJ springs, which were actually labeled as a 6-inch TJ spring. The new springs I'm putting in are Skyjacker 3-inch XJ spring or 4-inch TJ spring. They actually say that right on them. So we were at 41.5 before with a temporary 2-inch lift spring that I had put in here. It was not enough lift. This spring that I'm putting in measures, what did we say? It was 1 3/4 less than the spring that I took out previously. I didn't take that spring out just now. So the spring that I just put in here measured 22.5. The spring that I had in here originally was it was a cut down 5-inch lift spring, and it measured 23 3/4. So that's where we're sitting. I am really happy with how that's sitting at full shock extension right now. So like I said, this is a 30-inch fully extended shock, and I will be looking to get the closest equivalent to that from the Skyjacker ADX 2.0 that I'll be putting in here, which I was saying the Skyjacker ADX shock is a remote reservoir shock, and I've not had the opportunity to own and run a remote reservoir shock before. So I'm very excited for that step up in the world. The Skyjacker ADX shocks are the most affordable remote reservoir shock that I have found. They are very nicely crafted, and from everyone I've talked to, they ride amazingly well. So again, I'm looking forward to all of that in my life. And we are just removing the shock over here. Let me bring the camera around. The rest of this process is going to go pretty quick. So, get that shock out of there. This spring, oh, I forgot to do the bump stop. Whoa, camera is wonky. Ah. Sorry. There we go. Yes, I've got to do this bump stop. I'm going to put it back on the other side, but do that later. I was saying before when I did the other side, so if you weren't here when I did the other side, that the Metal Cloak Duro bumps that I'm running are super nice as an extended upper bump stop, and then my lower is just some hockey pucks that I've made. Drilled them out, got the correct length bolt, and added a big old washer on the top. So all those really are is a landing pad for the upper. They don't add any cushion. The hockey puck might compress a little bit on an extremely hard hit, but you would not be counting on the hockey puck to give you any sort of dampening. All right. Bump stop should be out. first. All right. You guys see the eclipse today? That was all the talk on the internet, of course. It got cloudy here about 15 minutes before the eclipse went off. So I saw a sliver of the sun. It got about as dark as it is out right now at almost 8 o'clock at night. And that was the extent of the excitement here. All right, which way does this want to come out? Usually they come off the back, but there we go. All right, here, I didn't show you this on the other side. So here is the rock crawler 3-inch TJ spring, which is a 2-inch XJ spring. And here's what's going in. So there's definitely differences between these two springs, and we're really not here to talk about the rock crawler spring, which I just threw in there because it was sitting on the shelf here at Hardline. Bill was nice enough to say, hey, try that and see, you know, might as well see how different that is than what you had. So I gave it a shot, knowing that it was probably going to be shorter than I wanted, and that's what I measured starting out as a starting point here tonight, was the rock crawler 2-inch spring. So it doesn't want to go back on the way it came off. Hopefully I can get that in another way here. If my steering wheel wasn't locked, I could get it in that way. Oh, well, with the shock out, I could definitely lower this, which I haven't done. Let's do that. Little radius arm things. Spring pad is so far back. So close. I think we got it. Come on. Yes. Certainly wedged it in there. Where's my steering wheel automatically locked? And I put it in there. Wants to go. Come on. All right, I gotta lower this down. I'm not even on this pole jack anyway. Turn my key, unlock my steering wheel. Spring looks good right there, doesn't it? Perfect. That should allow me to swing that where I need to go. Oh, look at that. Should have done that in the first place. Now, Am I high enough to get this pull jack in? Nope. So what I'm looking for as far as spring measurement, to get the maximum down travel at least, is whether or not the coil spring comes unseated with the shock at full extension. Ideally, if you're going to be cycling the suspension completely all the time, you would want an actual limit strap and not a shock doing that job. But, you know, if it's just kind of going to be when you're flexed, most factory suspensions, straight axle anyway, limit on the shock. So not really any crime there. Although some people will argue the latter. Okay, shock is in, and that coil is, well, let's get all the weight off of that. There we go. No pull jack in there anymore. And this coil is just coming unseated a little bit. It's never going to come off of there fully, of course. There's no way it could fall out because you got all this up top, and then I've got the bump stops in the bottom. I would kind of, like, I wouldn't hesitate to run a slightly shorter shock, is kind of what I'm getting at here. So, you know, obviously the suspension is just free hanging. There's no down force on it right now. So it is possible if it was swinging a little bit more that, that I could get more down travel out of it unintentionally. So I think I'll have to look. I haven't obviously looked at what the Skyjacker catalog offers, but again, going ADX 2.0 shocks, that's their remote reservoir, like top of the line shock, and retail is like $280 a piece, I think, off the top of my head. This is a 30-inch fully extended shock currently with the pin top. I don't want to do the bar pin eliminator or pin top eliminator, whatever you want to call it. Shock adapter, it just shortens the shock more and, you know, eliminates useful travel. So JKs use this same style mount if I need to go that route. I realize valving might not be exactly the same, but I'm not really set up as a factory XJ either as far as weight and suspension geometry and everything. So not against that if that's where I need to go, but I just primarily want something, you know, in the ballpark and the right length. So I would probably go a little shorter, 28 3/4 to 29 3/4 would be fine. I'm definitely not going over 30 inches fully extended. Dude, you are absolutely right. How much easier it is on a lift, and it changes everything about working on a vehicle. I'm not at all trying to brag because I still do work at home. I still, you know, have all the years of background doing that. And I, to be totally candid and honest, thought that working daily on vehicles was going to beat me up and be something that I couldn't enjoy doing long term because of that was my only experience was working. I mean, I've worked on some lifts, but hadn't worked in and out of different vehicles enough on lifts to know how much of a difference it really makes. The toll it takes on your body working on a vehicle this way is probably like 1/16 of what it is when you're sitting on a hard shop floor and moving floor jacks and jack stands and all of those awful things. that is really not a bad place to start. Everybody starts somewhere, and absolutely no regrets in having lived that life. But if you can ever get yourself a lift, man, total game changer for everything that you do. And the times that you do have to work on your vehicle another way, it makes you very appreciative of the times that you get to work on a lift. And there's always going to be roadside repairs, trail repairs, and all that kind of thing. But yeah, it just makes doing projects like this, like, hey, I'm going to do that after work today, even though I worked on vehicles all day. Not so much of a hesitation. So I'd like to put the bump stops back in, but I also don't want to bore you guys with making this excessively longer than I have to. I already started putting this one in, so let me do this one, and then I will break and we'll drop it down and see where we're sitting. I can easily put the bump stop in just by raising it back up again after the live is over. So I'll just get the nut started on that one. I don't want to forget to hook up the anti-rock because that can't get hooked back up after things are back down. If it's not put in at all, I raise it back up. And I will not need to be doing anything else with those tonight, so I'm going to go ahead and tighten those down. There's my 5/8 wrench. Then we'll put tires on and drop it down. So don't go away just yet. If you're getting bored, you're going to see the result here in probably less than 5 minutes. I'd love to lift it with the forklift and show you guys. I'm not forklift certified, and Bill is not here to assist me if I get any sort of questioning mode with the forklift. I've used it like twice to get it out of the way, not to actually do forklift things. Yet another thing that's easier on a lift that you might not think of if you haven't used a lift to put tires on. You'd think it would be easier to get them on down by the ground. Unless it's a 37 on a beadlock, like a real heavy 37. If it's a 37 on a wheel like this, I can do it, but yeah, the lift is still easier for this too. Last lug nut. Then we get to sit down. All right, I'm going to move us to the other side over here. Far enough back you can see everything. And 4 people still hanging on. All right, guys, let's do it. Coming down. I'm excited. Get to see where we sit. 41.5, I think, right? Should be what the sticker says on that side. And I'm totally good if the front end is sitting a little bit low because I do not have my spare tire on the back. Still in the process of building that swing out. So I will tell you for comparison that previously the anti-rock arms had a slight upward angle to them, but they were close to flat. And they are angled up right now. We are fully off the lift pads. It's definitely lower in the front than it was with the 4.5s, but you guys didn't see that. So let's see this wheel straighter. Time to check. What do you think? I think we went up a good bit. I see 42.5. Should be 1 inch. And that makes all the sense given that we took out a 2-inch spring and put in a 3-inch spring. So just for your visual reference here, 42.5. So that is pretty cool, apples to apples. And stand over here so I'm in frame and not blocking the Jeep entirely and the beautiful work we just did. I want to flex it on the forklift. I want to drive it for a couple days, and I would really like to get my spare back on there to see how that sits in the back. It's definitely raked a little bit. I'll pull the camera way back here at the end so you guys can see. It is definitely raked to the front a bit. I might, if I have to, just add a small spacer puck. Turn the camera around. Thank you guys so much for hanging out and sticking with me on this install. I don't see a way to zoom out on here, but that's in. No, there's no way to access the wide lens, I don't think. That is the rear facing camera. Back you up just a little bit more, but I can't really go further back at this angle. I'm bumping into another toolbox here. So there you have it. Definitely rake to the front, but we put a 120-ish pound spare on there hanging off the back, and it's not, obviously my fridge isn't loaded. You know, I'm not fully set up for going camping. It used to sit pretty squatted in the back when I would load it up for like an overland trip. So I do have the ability to raise the shackle another position here in the back to raise up the rear, but I just didn't like how tall that sat at. The shackle angle wasn't great. Shackle angle right now is like perfect. It rides awesome. If I mean, I'd almost rather leave the front where it's at and take a leaf out of the rear. These leaf packs are very heavy duty, overload setup. They ride really awesome. The Skyjacker springs always rode super nice in the front, and keeping the tension on it, you know, at full extension. So I feel like I'm gonna like this setup here, and if I need to bring the back end down, I will do that with a leaf spring. I think if anything though, it's gonna ride exactly where I want it with weight in there. I'll try to, either here or on Instagram, most likely just on Instagram because that's the easiest. If you guys don't follow me there, at DIRTROADTHERAPYJON. And I'll be sure to post some flex pics on the forklift here when we're ready to do that. But yeah, that's the work completed for this evening. I got to get those bump stops in there, but I'm going to stop the live feed here. And you guys have a good night. Happy Monday. Happy Eclipse Day. All that stuff. And we will see you again soon. Thanks for watching.